So we want to take a look at how the auto-generated transactions look like. And here we have a very simple view controller that just loads some texts and throws it onto the view. And if I click here, it just pops up. And maybe I do it again. You see clearly that here is some delay happening, and there might be a performance problem, and we should look into that. Okay, then let's go back to the performance overview page. And here now, maybe we can just switch to the view that I was talking before. So here, see the cold start, warm start, slow and frozen frames. And if I change this to last 14 days, you see that that changes accordingly. So that's the time span. And I also can change here the cold start distribution to warm start distribution. I can also take a look at that. This really gives you good insight in how long the application needs to launch. This here is actually way too long for an iOS application because I use the simulator a lot. So if this would be a real application, I would be really in trouble because, yeah, 2 seconds is definitely too much for an iOS application. Okay, now let's go to this view controller. Again, go to recent transactions. And I have mine from just a few minutes ago. And I can take a look. And here I see that I have a frozen frame here on the right. I was talking about that before. This means that one frame took longer than 700 milliseconds to render. And this is also the hitch that we saw previously when I was clicking in the simulator. And I can see here that the view did load took around 800 milliseconds, which is very, very long. Those 500 milliseconds for the view appearing is fine because that's the animation that we have. So we should investigate this. Okay, I just have here my controls. Okay, here. Okay, let's investigate this. And I would be curious. I mean, here it's very obvious that that's the only thing going on here, that this is the thing that's slowing down my UI view controller. But I just want to make sure that this is exactly the code that's slowing my application down. And of course, I could now create another transactions as I did it before, but that's not nice. Ideally, I would see a span in this transaction here telling me where I spent most of my time. And luckily, we can do that. What we can do is, I think Bruno mentioned that before, we can go to the SDK and just call .span, which gives me the current ongoing transaction that the SDK is generating for you. And I can just call it to start another span. Let's just call it UI.load. And I finish it afterwards here. And with that, I can attach a span to the auto-generated transaction. So this is really powerful. You can create another whole huge tree of spans that you just, if you're not satisfied with what we give you, and you get loads of more insight. Okay, again, I just capture 2 transactions. And now we need to hope that this is already here. Nope, sometimes it just takes a few seconds until that pops up. But in the meantime, for example, I can show here, you can also click on View All Events, where you get a better overview of all the transactions that are around here. You can sort them by timestamp. You can even filter by user ID or, I don't know, SDK version, any parameter, any tag that you find, you can filter that here and it will just show you those transactions. So let's hope that that's here right now. Yeah, the transactions are here. And here I have another UI load span. So I should have given it maybe a name so that I would be sure that this is mine, but I know this is mine because I just added it. So I'm pretty sure that this is slowing down my application. So let's just fix this by moving that to a background thread. So we just create a dispatch queue. For those who don't know what a dispatch queue is, it's just a fancy way of executing something on a background thread. Just make this real quick and hacky. This is how we throw it onto a background thread. And of course, all mobile developers know I need to make sure that this runs again on the main thread, because otherwise I would crash my application. Sorry. So that would make it faster, but I also know that I can optimize this like crazy by just reducing delay here to 100 milliseconds. That's the best optimization I can do. Just compile that again. And when I click here, I see immediately that this is way smoother. So I don't have that delay. I see that slight delay that I kick off on the background thread, loading something from the file system and just putting the text here. Okay, let's go back and go again to the transaction summary and hope that my transaction is here already. Seems like it's here. Yeah, and here I see, okay, my UI load still takes around 200 milliseconds, but the view did load now only takes not even a millisecond. And I got rid of the frozen frame. I still have a slow frame here, which is not that optimal, of course, but the frozen frame is gone. And I also, that the duration of the transaction went down from 1 second to around 500 milliseconds. So now we fixed it. And of course, we also want to, as developers, we also want to avoid regressions and to be notified if that gets slower. And something that we can do is we can just click here on create alert, and we can create an alert rule for this transaction, for this screen that is loading here. Here I again can select the percentiles that I want, so that I just don't be notified if 1 or 2 transactions take way too long, because I don't know, maybe there's some conditions happening which are not really relevant, but I just want to make sure, okay, if multiple of them are over this, what I specify down here, then I will be notified. I can also specify the time interval. So not only if this is happening for longer than 10 minutes, and maybe let's say, okay, if this takes longer than 800 milliseconds to load, it's critical, and I want to receive a warning if it's slower than 700 milliseconds. Down here, I can add an action. So I will just select me, that I receive an email. If you have integrations, you can also, I don't know, send a Slack notification, PagerDuty, whatever, depending on what integrations you have. Just give this a name, save it, and then I would receive an email if multiple transactions come in and they are slow. But now I'm going to delete it again because I don't want to receive some notifications here. And that's how we fixed a slow screen, which is kind of now using synthetic methods with real user monitoring. So you could also use that in development, of course, if you're not familiar with a profiler, which can be pretty complex and hard to understand. So you could also use Sentry during development to speed up your application.